Hello and welcome to PPC Live, the podcast. I'm your host, Anu, the founder of PPC Live. And if you're used to hearing advice from PPC experts about how to ensure that we're keeping up with the ever-changing landscape, don't worry, you are still in the right place. Every week, I speak to a different PPC expert about the F-ups that they've made and what they've learned from it so that you don't make the same mistakes again. This is the kind of mistakes that really help us see how experts build up their expertise, how they become the people who are doing the work well. They have their own systems in place. They have their checklist in place. They all start off from mistakes most of the time. And this time we speak to the very geeky and lovely Peter Bowen, who he's based out of Gran Canaria, but used to live in the UK, but he's South African. And he's got close to 20 years of experience of helping businesses, especially deliver leads. So he's been specializing in B2B lead gen. Yeah, we don't get too much of those guys, do we? So this is a great story that he shares about currency issues as well as system decay issues, and ensuring that you're not just, beelining and just laser focused on what's happening within the Google Ads platform, but actually understanding the conversion tracking communication systems that need to ensure that the bid strategies are doing the right thing. He shares so much. He really geeks out. I cannot underestimate how much he geeks out. And this was one of most enjoyable conversations that I've had on this podcast, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it as well. So let's go speak to Pete. Hello, Peter. Welcome to PPC Live, the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here with you.
I'm so delighted, and I'm so grateful. This is how I do the podcast now. It's literally every week I'm like, who wants to talk about the mistake? And it's hard to do it weeks in advance planning, because I don't want people to think too much about it, because this is not something that, you should worry too much. And I think my best guests have been those who, like Peter, maybe I literally ask him to be on the podcast maybe half an hour before we actually start recording. And he's just like, yeah, I've got some ideas. Oh my God. And it just makes for the best kind of episode. So everyone's in for a treat. But before we go into what the mistakes are, let's introduce you to Peter. So Peter is someone who's had a very varied career. He used to be a soldier, a Mormon missionary, and then an engineer, and then became a business owner before actually focusing on Google Ads since 2007. He moved from South Africa, so he's South Africa born, moved to the UK during the financial crisis, built a tool that made it easy to generate leads without any prior experience. And what began as teaching others then evolved into managing campaigns himself. And that system has now produced over 2 million leads. He's now based in sunny Gran Canaria. Honestly, Peter, I wish you'd had a background of your window so that we could see the beautiful views.
If I turned my camera around, you would see a pile of surfboards packed in the corner of my office, because my wife said she doesn't want my collection in the lounge.
Oh, Lord, yes. When the guys have their hobbies, you need to find a special story for them. I love it. Oh, surfing in Gran Canaria. Well, he's not surfing in Gran Canaria. He continues to work with clients while thinking critically about the future of Google Ads and how businesses can balance technology with a more human approach. And honestly, when I say he definitely thinks about the future of Google Ads, he does, because he's got this fantastic book. Now, those who are listening, you're not seeing what I'm showing here, but those who are on the video, you can see me showing Peter's book, which is called Profitable Google Ads. And it's a business owner's guide to getting more leads and sales from Google Ads. And it's about written in plain English. For those who are not, who are nervous about all the jargon and all our acronyms, in it you'll learn Google Ads doesn't succeed unless it's part of a working system. And he shows what that system should look like, how to assemble it. You'll learn about converting more website visitors, attracting better quality leads, turning leads into customers. I genuinely think this is a very valuable book, because a lot of people in the industry, we're always talking about how that whole lead gen part of the system of our industry, they get really overlooked when it comes to, like, Google Marketing Live or new updates. A lot of the updates just really seem to be for e-com. For this being very directly about lead gen, I think this is a very, very great book to have. Where can people get it if they want to get
You
their
can get yourself a copy on Amazon or direct from my website, pete-bowen.com.
Fantastic. We'll share that link on the show notes. So if you guys want that book, check it out. I also asked Pete whether he wanted the fact that he wrote the book to be his fun fact, but he was like, no, that's not a fun fact, it's a boring fact. So now Peter is going to give you his fun fact.
Okay, my fun fact is I was once tricked into swimming through a river where crocodiles had been seen.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
I'll be quick. I used to be an engineer, and my company was designing a small dam across the river, and we needed to measure the depth of the rock at the bottom of the river so we could figure out what the dam should be like.
Yeah.
And we hired a surveyor to go and do that, and none of his guys would get into the water.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I'll get into the water and I'll hold the surveying stick that you used for measuring it. And only once I had finished, after about an hour in the water, did they tell me the reason his guys wouldn't get in the water was because a farmer had shot an enormous crocodile there the previous weekend, and they were worried that there might be more.
My God. So thankfully there were no crocodiles. You didn't see any crocodiles, but...
Never saw a crocodile, but yeah, a fun fact.
Fun fact for that one. Oh my God. Yeah. And this was in South Africa.
That was in South Africa.
What parts? If people
that was in KwaZulu, sort of on the eastern side of the eastern side of the bottom of South Africa.
Right.
Lovely, warm, subtropical place with
Absolutely.
crocodiles.
Yeah, crocodiles. They love the warm weather. I think that's one thing that I'm grateful about living in the UK. I don't think crocodiles will be coming anywhere.
No, there's not much there that will kill you.
No, right? I think I went to New Orleans like a few years ago, and it's a beautiful part of the US, but another thing that they're known for is like their swamps, and you can do like tours on their swamps. And I remember I was like, yeah, so it was like one of the few things where like, if you're going to go to New York, you need to check out. And I was like, will there be crocodiles? They're like, yeah, of course, that's what we're going for. And I'm like, no, thank you. I have zero interest in seeing crocodile. Even like on the TV, it gives me, I don't know, it gives me a bit of chills. Like, I think that was a cruel joke that your ex-colleagues played on you, man. But yeah, you're a better man than me. So amazing for you to have done that. Anyway, you guys are like, I know why you're talking about crocodiles. This podcast is not about crocodiles. So let's get on to what this show is about. Peter is another one in our long line of fantastic guests who's going to come on and share some mistakes that he's made. He's told me that he's got a couple for you, a couple of ones to share. And I think they're really great ones that we really should think about. I find that we don't necessarily think about these kind of issues because they might seem a bit too small or a bit too far away. But I think these are important ones for us to think about. And hopefully that means you don't make that mistake anytime in the future. So, Pete, what is the F-up you'd like to share with us today?
Well, the first one was one that I made in the first year of managing Google Ads. I was living in the UK, and we had a lot of clients in South Africa just because of my history over there. And the South African rand was worth about 1/10 of a pound. And because of the exchange rate. And so back in those days, setting up payment was really complicated. So a lot of agencies would bill the client, and then we would pay Google for the client. And so we agreed a budget for the client. I forget what it was. I think it was like the equivalent of, I don't know, maybe 1,000 South African rand, about 100 pounds. But because I set the account up in the UK, it defaulted currency to pounds, and I completely overlooked that. And so in the first month, I spent, from our own agency credit card, I spent 10 times what the client had allocated as the monthly budget. And this client was incredibly happy. You can imagine how many leads they got when you're spending 10 times their budget.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it was only after that, well, we had I discussed it with my partner, and we agreed that it was our problem, and we were very, very sad. And we didn't tell the client that we wanted his money, but we did say next month is going to be a lot worse. And when next month was a lot worse, he cancelled
Oh, no.
because he had been expecting this kind of
Yes.
£1,000 results with £100 budget. So yeah, that
Yes.
was a very painful and expensive mistake. So now there's an item on the campaign setup checklist which says check currency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know what? One thing I also say to that, and guys, people are listening to this. I'm like, oh, Anu must have structured this so well, weeks and months in advance. Our not maybe not the previous guest, two guests prior.
Uh-huh.
Our guest might remember her as Lightning, Maddie Lightning, because she has a fantastic last name. Maddie Lightning also talked about currency, setting the wrong currency,
Okay.
but because the exchange rate was a bit better, she was actually underreporting in that case.
Oh,
So,
well done her.
right, exactly. So that was one case where it was like, oh, it was a mistake, but hey, I am actually really glad that we now have a case of someone saying that that mistake can go the other way really badly,
Yeah,
leading to losing a client, which sucks.
that's it. And all that money, we never got a chance to make it back. But
No.
this is part of learning. I think the important thing is you make a mistake once
Yeah.
and never
Yeah.
make the same mistake again.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
can help that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I don't think we need to go even more into too much details. You've given us the roundup, how it felt,
Yeah,
what happened. So let's put that one to bed. Let's go on to the
it's still scarred on my soul. But
blurs. But
anyway,
yeah, yeah. Well, the learning
let's talk
from it
about
from
the other things.
yeah, the learning from that is make that checklist for those kind of things in terms of like currency. Especially when you're dealing with international clients, you get loads of that these days, especially with consultants being in one country, your client is in another country. It's a very easy mistake to make. So yeah, let's listen out and look out for that. But yeah, let's go on to the next one.
So the next one's actually a class of mistakes. I
Okay.
think about these as system decay or leaky plumbing. Some part of the infrastructure that connects Google Ads to your landing page and connects your leads back to the person who's going to handle the leads and connects the way the leads are handled back to Google for feedback through offline conversion tracking, whatever. All of that infrastructure, that system. I've seen so many mistakes, and I've been part of them, where that system breaks and then it
Mm.
stops the signal going back, and then that causes a disaster with the advertising. And you would think it shouldn't, but this happened just for about a month, but we just discovered this problem last week. A client had been, they got about 60 tracking phone numbers because they've got a fairly extensive ad account that I manage for them. And over the last 6 months or so, they've migrated from CallRail to something called Cloud Talk,
Okay.
and then to AirCall. These are all sort of AI enhanced call center type systems. So they've migrated their tracking numbers across these different platforms. And then I got about a month ago, the client said, this last one doesn't work properly anymore. We're now moving this back to our old in-house PABX system, and we're not going to be able to give you tracking data for about a month because the developers needed to build the stuff that they needed to send back to my system so that I could upload those calls as conversions. In the same way CallRail and what converts did, I've got a system that allows you to do that without using those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I saw no call volume being recorded, and I sent them a message. I said, we're going to expect, as anybody would, we're going to expect our ad performance to suffer
Yeah.
because we're optimizing for conversions that aren't happening. And so over the course of a month, the ad spend went from about 200,000 down to about 40,000 because Google couldn't keep optimizing for no convert. All of this
Right.
is kind of completely expected.
Yeah.
And then the business owner and I were in a meeting, and he was getting very, very grumpy with me. And so we called in the developer guy that was building the system. I said, right, this is what we own. He said, okay, we finished this, but we didn't tell you about that we
Yeah.
finished and ready. He also said something which is incredibly embarrassing. He said, but the tracking from AirCall was never taken down.
Oh.
So all of that time, I was supposed to have been receiving that data from AirCall
Yeah.
because I had complained to them that it wouldn't happen, that
Mm,
the ad campaign would be terrible. So without telling me, they had left all of that in place. But you remember there was a Cloudflare outage a
yeah.
few weeks ago. Aircall saw all of these webhooks failing. Sorry,
Mm.
I'm getting a bit geeky. If you don't know what
Yeah,
a
go
webhook is,
on.
it's a message from one system to another, from Aircall to Litero, where we track the conversions.
Okay.
Aircall saw all of these, like 50 of them failed because Cloudflare was broken. And so they sent the developer a message saying, hey, your webhooks are broken. And the developer thought, I wonder what this webhook is. I'll think about it tomorrow.
Oh,
And so we lost a month's worth of tracking data because I wasn't aware that we were supposed to be getting that. And
yeah.
the developer didn't care. Didn't care. The
Yeah.
developer didn't have top of mind that this
Yes.
webhook had failed. So what happened was a whole bunch of people, nobody malicious, just everybody busy, and nobody monitoring this data flow and
Yeah.
monitoring the system. So that was the most recent. I could probably tell you 10 other things but I won't.
Yeah. That can be
But
for another episode. We'll
for another
definitely
day.
bring you back.
Yeah.
Go on.
System decay, plumbing problems. And
Mm.
nowadays, when ads are so dependent on good data,
Yeah.
the minute that data breaks, the campaigns fall apart.
Yes, absolutely. And like the way I even like see it is that, people don't you don't think about that part of it. And there's a lot of like the issues that people are like, oh, conversion tracking. I wonder whether this has something to do with it, because like, in our previous episode as well, Charlotte Osborne was like, what's the biggest mistake that she sees, like when she's auditing account, and it's like conversion tracking and not be set. And I'm like, how that that is something that there's probably so many best practice kind of
Yeah.
documents around. Maybe I'll ask someone to write another article of an up-to-date conversion track and how you set it up. But I'm like, it's got to be something else than just not combine. Maybe this has something to do with it as well. Is it possible that conversion tracking can be mistaken for this kind of issue that you guys
Yeah.
have?
I think what happens is somewhere there's a break in the signal.
Yeah.
The signal doesn't flow all the way from the first impression all the way to a sale happening. And
Yeah.
any break along that path tends to cause poor ad performance.
Yeah.
Sometimes those breaks show up as broken conversion tracking, and sometimes broken conversion tracking is the cause of the poor ad performance.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, of course, it's conversion tracking that can be the biggest issues for it. So like, yeah, so let's go back to this story. Like,
Uh-huh.
at what point, so it was in that meeting with the business owner that you were like, oh no, I've effed up something here.
Yes. And that's what I told him. I said, this is my fault.
Okay.
But it's only half my fault because
Okay.
this is what I was told, but I should have been checking that anyway.
Yeah.
Because I think ultimately as agents, we carry a duty to our clients. And sometimes that duty goes into their business so that
Mm.
even though their developer or their call center or whoever caused the problem, I think we still have the duty to make sure that somebody knows about that problem, because
Yeah.
it tends not to happen. And I'm saying this might sound a bit horrible, but employees tend to be focused on their job, not
Yeah.
necessarily coloring outside the lines or
Yeah.
they stay in their lane. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I meant. So yes, I told him it was my fault. I told him what
Yeah.
I'd done to prevent it,
Yeah.
and we agreed to carry on as we were before.
Okay, so lovely. So this is a client that all fingers crossed and toes crossed is it hasn't said goodbye to you, hasn't ended.
Yeah, we've been working together for about 8 years now, and
Nice.
this is not the first time his people have broken the advertising.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
So he understands. He kind of you said to him that was the mistake. This is what happened, and he kind of was like, okay,
yeah,
got it. We understand actually what happened. He wasn't pissed off.
yeah, and I showed him what I'd done to prevent this kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a geek, and so I programmed a dashboard that checks every single landing page in my entire ecosystem every 15
Nice.
minutes,
Yeah.
and it checks every lead source.
Yeah.
and start shouting at me if we haven't received a lead within a certain time. And sorry, I'm getting really geeky over here.
Oh,
And it
don't
also keeps a
apologize for that.
log. It also keeps a log of every conversion that we've uploaded to Google. So we say, we told Google this. This lead
Yeah.
came in, this lead was qualified, this lead turned into a customer. And so they will say, right, we told Google this on this day, and then we can go in and make sure that we're getting more or less the same data in the account. So got this sort of thing watching everything, hoping, I'm sure we're going to find more places for it to break, more leaks in the plumbing, and fix them then.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you'll be, so you have a system in place to check out for those leaks, check out for like any like misstep that could be happening. Something I also caught in your story that, yeah, Google doesn't necessarily always come out looking like the good guy in some of these stories, but it actually sounds like they did. This time, you're like, they were not seeing enough of the conversions. So they reduced the spend. They were not just like, we don't
Yes.
care about your conversions. We're just going to keep spending however we want to spend. So, yay, Google are the good guys in this case.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that's the way the bidding algorithm is supposed to work. If we're not hitting those conversion targets, we're gonna drop that. Obviously, if you had a maximize conversions bidding strategy, you would then end up spending all of your money on nothing. But this bidding
Right.
strategy for this particular account was a target CPA,
Right.
and so it's saying, oh, I can't get that because there's no feedback.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Interesting.
I'm not a Google hater all of the
No.
time.
No, no.
I think we all are some of the time, but
Yes.
it does work
It does work.
when you work within its limitations.
So do you have like a favorite or like a bit strategy or a bit strategy like because you've just mentioned
Mm,
one you just put that case that's I think that's a very important point people should listen to that target CPA meant that when they're not seeing the conversions your spend will go down, but if it was max revenue that you were going for or max conversions you were going for, it would have kept spending. So would you
yeah,
advise people to maybe stay away from certain bit strategies in certain instances?
no, I'm not sure that I would do that.
Okay.
What I would say is that two things. One is remember that Google repeats what you reward. So
Mm.
if you reward it by saying this is a conversion, it will go and get you more of those conversions. And so if you tell it your reward is getting me as many conversions, regardless of what they cost, Google will
Also do
do
that.
that, will
Yeah.
repeat that. So I tend to, there is no right bidding strategy. It's all,
Okay.
the answer is always going to be, it
It
depends on
depends.
everything.
Yeah.
But there are some bidding strategies that come with built-in guardrails,
Yeah.
and that's helpful. For instance, the portfolio version of the maximize conversions bidding strategy, you can set, if you set a target CPA, you can also set a max CPC,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is very, very handy. If
Yeah.
you've ever paid $500 for a click, that should be worth 20.
Jesus.
Again, I have that scar next to the exchange rate scar. I have the
Yes.
$2,500 day scar.
Oh my
5
gosh.
clicks at 500 a shot, because the bidding algorithm occasionally does crazy things. So you've got to give it
Yes.
those guardrails.
Yes, yes. Put those CPC guardrails in. That's also something that
Yeah.
has been talked about before. Like, yeah, even though it's like the targeting, you also don't want to create, high CPCs. And I think that these are the kind of conversations that are also important to bring to the surface about doing paid search in 2026 because you get, I'm a with search engine land, I'm always writing, all these kind of reports on a yearly basis. CPCs are going up. CPCs are going up. And on one hand, yeah, maybe Google could be pushing it, but I think we totally ignore the point of view of the fact of like, are the advertisers actually doing the right things and using these bid strategies properly to ensure that their CPCs are not being inflated in a way that could be avoidable? I mean, yeah, there's sometimes that it can't be avoidable, but there's some cases that it could be avoidable if you put those CPC guardrails in place.
I think the fundamental problem is that it looks really easy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can ask ChatGPT, how do I build a profitable Google Ads campaign? And they will say things. And then you'll see people complaining on Reddit or complaining on X or in Slack saying, "I've just spent 5,000 and I got 0.
Yeah.
Google is
Yeah.
a Google is a scam." But in reality, it's not Google that's the problem. It's the way you did Google that's the problem.
Oh my God. I think I need to actually send a clip of this to like Ginny Marvin on Google. So I'm like, guys, even the practitioners, we understand the fact that it depends on how you use it and you cannot just. You can ask ChatGPT to give you an idea, to maybe give you like a framework, but you need to color in the lines. It's important. There's so many different colors you can use to color in the line to create a profitable Google Ads campaign for your client. Oh, this has been such an interesting chat so far, and just going
Yeah,
into
this
like
is
the
fun.
importance of doing this. But yeah, looking back now, let's go back to that system decay issue. What is it now in terms of process that you do differently from that mistake that you're like, this is how we avoid making that mistake?
Well, I think the first mistake I told you about, we avoid by adding items to the checklist.
Yeah,
And so I've got a checklist that gets longer and longer. And even though I've done the work over and over again, the checklist makes sure I don't forget anything.
yeah,
And then the other thing is to have a system that does some of the monitoring.
sure, okay,
So the landing pages, you
yeah,
could go every morning and open up every single landing page
yeah,
that you've got, but that would take you half the morning.
yes,
Or you could have some kind of uptime monitor, and then you
yes,
just go and check that the uptime monitor is working.
yes,
So
yeah.
you've always got to have these, there are ways of having things that monitor what's going on for you.
Okay. Is this kind of uptime monitor? Because I know, like, you're a figure out a solution for yourselves kind of guy. I feel like
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting. You're like a geeky kind of things. Like I wanna figure
I
things.
am sorry. I started programming computers as a child, and they've always
Wow,
fascinated me. And so I've
that's
ended up
amazing.
building
The
solutions to these
tools.
kinds of problems. But website
Yeah.
uptime monitors, I mean, you can find them all over the show.
Okay.
They're very,
Okay.
very, very common things.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. If someone has just discovered this F up and they've just seen that, yeah, they were supposed to be receiving a whole bunch of these conversions and it didn't come through and they knew they were the ones they were the problem. What's your advice to them?
Well, I guess there are a couple of things to think about here. The first is you've got to get the campaign back on track, right?
Sure.
Okay, so that's kind of from a technical perspective. You need to fix whatever caused the problem in the first place. And then there's the facility to do a data exclusion on Google. Now, this isn't something a lot of people think about, but
Mm.
Google knows that conversion tracking breaks.
Yeah.
And so there's the facility to go into Google and give it a date range up to
Yeah.
2 weeks at a time, or you can stack
Yeah.
them to get a month or whatever, and say, please ignore everything that I told you. Please ignore all conversions or lack of conversions in this period. And that's been surprisingly effective. That's one of those things that actually does what it says on the tin. I'm not sure that AI Max and P Max and all of those kind of things
Yeah.
deliver the promise, but don't count these conversions. That seems to work really well. So
Yeah.
fix the problem, exclude the data, change how you work so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And if there's even one thing, I feel like you've given a little snapshot because now it's been speaking close to half an hour about this issue and you've given
Sorry
so
about
many
that.
like no apologies needed. No, like yeah, you've got a really great insight for us. One thing now, before we now go into looking at mistakes that you see in the industry, what's one thing you want to leave people with to wrap up that story?
Hmm. I'll say the same thing I started earlier. Don't make the same mistake more than once.
Yeah. 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 It's important because, and I say that to, I've said that to juniors in the past when I've managed people. Of like, look, mistakes can be made once, learn from it. Don't, this podcast is all about we're sharing mistakes, but I don't want people to go away and going, oh, making as many mistakes as possible is fine. No, you're wasting people's money if you're just I'm just going to make mistakes. You need to learn from the mistake and, put guardrails in place so that you're not the person who's just unreliable, just making mistakes left and right. So yeah, for sure. Make that mistake once, learn from it, make sure you don't make it again. So I'm hoping that, that close to half an hour chat with Peter that we've just had has really opened your eyes to like making sure that you don't make the mistake about currencies, putting the wrong currency in, and, making sure that you're aware of all the conversions that's supposed to be coming in through in a certain month. All right. Let's tangent off to something else. I like to tell my guests, your PTSD moment is over. We can now
Okay.
put that story in the back into its box that you neatly tidied it into, and let's move into seeing what other people have done that has made you go, what is going on, guys? We should know better. So any mistakes that that jump out to you that you're like, that really shocks you that it's still happening?
Yeah. I think the root cause of this mistake is that the person managing the ads doesn't think past the interface,
Oh,
past the UI. They don't connect, these are ads and this is business. And
yeah.
they don't make that connection between the two of them. I had a recent case. Most of my clients I deal with remotely. This guy phoned me up and said, hey, my wife and I live here in Gran Canaria. Can you please come around and meet with us? Because we've spent 30,000 euros in the last 2 months on Google Ads and we haven't made a single sale from that. And I went there and I sat with them at the kitchen table. Their laptops were kind of sticky because the kids were there. Great people.
Oh, love.
They had hired somebody who had worked at Google, and this guy had set up the most technically incredible campaign, but because they're using a booking engine, their conversion is someone comes in there, chooses a date and time, and pays.
Yeah.
That booking engine didn't have the facility to track a conversion, as a lot of these third-party tools don't.
Yeah.
And so this person said, well, don't worry about that. We'll just maximize clicks. We'll get you visits to your website. And because he had worked for Google, I think he was one of the XWFs, not a real Google employee, they trusted him. And all this money, for a small husband and wife business, 30,000 euros it's a car, it's a nice holiday.
Exactly.
It's real money. For somebody
Yes.
perhaps who, was used to spending somebody else's money, it's not. Anyway, no conversion tracking. So he had said, maximize clicks. And every month he said, look, you're getting 15,000 clicks, you're getting 40,000 clicks, or whatever the number was. And I've seen that kind of disconnect so often, it drives me mad.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long ago was this?
This happened earlier this year.
Earlier this year, an ex-Google person said, let's just do maximize click. We'll just do traffic. I said it recently and I was like, any agency or any consultant that is just going, clicks is enough and I'm going to charge you for driving clicks to your site, they should be fired. They should be fired and we should name and shame them.
Yeah, I don't know his name, but I'd like to punch him in the face.
Yeah. Yeah. So what was your solution? Because, you did say that was the issue of like this third-party booking tool did not know how to manage, conversion. So what was your solution for them?
Well, the first thing we did is we turned off the Performance Max campaign.
Oh my God.
Because they operate a specialized service in a small country. I won't give any more details than that in case they bump into this. Hi, if you do. They were getting, every month, they were getting more impressions from this Performance Max campaign than people live in the country where they operate their business. Obviously, they were targeting a whole bunch of rubbish. Turns out they got this Google person because the wife had run the campaigns for a while, but she'd taken maternity leave for a couple of years. And so we went back to the basics, said, you can't track conversions. Okay, let's get as best, and let's do the best we can. So we're going to have a very tight campaign.
Yeah.
With exact match keywords if we can.
Yeah.
You're going to bid maximize clicks, but we're not showing ads on search partners, only search. We're not showing ads in the middle of the night.
No.
Only during working hours when you can respond. And we're going back to what worked as well as it could have with the data that we have available. And then they've got some developer building out a booking platform that will allow them to track conversions all the way from click through to sale. So, but going back to old school seemed to work for them.
Okay, fantastic. Going back to old school, and yeah, you don't have PMAX on if you can't track, because PMAX will just throw in any rubbish. And for the
Yeah,
fact
and
that
that's
yeah,
what was happening. It's really sad when you see, when you see there's a real business behind this. This is people who are working
yes,
hard, who are
yes,
good people. They've got a nice family, and they're just getting badly served by their person, their Google Ads
yeah.
person.
Yeah, no, it's such a shame, and shame to those guys. Like, if you're just running on clicks and you're not finding a way to ensure that those clicks are gonna come out into good conversions, yeah, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't be working on those accounts. And now let's shift into the more of like the AI world. I think it will be you're my first guest since the news of the fact that DSA has been finally. I think there was news that most of us in our industry were like, "Yeah, we knew that was coming." Okay, you're like, "All right," and it was almost
Took it
like a
out behind the
non-news.
shed and put it out of its misery.
Pretty much, pretty much. And now that has been, it's now being replaced with AI Max. And we've got P Max that's been around for years now, and and all different kind of things. And I don't know whether AI Max is working well for you, because was a little bit of some people's response saying that that's why they're not really excited, because AI Max is not necessarily working well yet. How are you finding AI Max? Are you testing it?
I haven't tested a single campaign on AI Max.
Okay.
I have an approach that's worked quite well, is that generally for the first 2 years of any new Google initiative, it's terrible. And then and I've done this for almost 20 years, and I've seen the same pattern over
Yeah.
and over. Maybe it'll be less than 2 years this time, we don't know. But it's
Yeah.
terrible, and then it does what it's supposed to do,
Yeah.
and we'll think we don't do that anymore, the old way. Now we only do the new way. But it takes a couple of years before it matures. And I saw the same thing with automated bidding and with smart bidding. I saw the same thing with broad match keywords, same thing with PMAX, and we'll see the same thing, I think, with AI.
Absolutely. You know what? I get it. And I totally hear you loud and clear. And several of the people like in my circle of like experts who are like, yeah, I'm not testing AMX yet. And I get it. Some people are, and they're like, oh, they can see some, here and there. And even the good performance. I'm worried that for people that, as you said, the first couple of years, that's not even how it's supposed to work. And there's still going to be loads of changes. And I guess Google is lucky that there's some people who are willing to be like, you know what, sure, we have enough budget to test it, even though that's not how it's supposed to work. So yeah, hopefully Google will learn from some of the mistakes happening, some of the bad results that have been shown, and they do make it a lot better very soon, especially for the fact that DSA is gone. But like, would you say that is a particular mistake when it comes to AI in terms of testing too early, or is there anything else on your mind?
I'm not sure if it's testing too early, but I think sometimes the mistake would be applying without thinking it all the way through.
Mm,
So if you think about any kind of test that we run, and if you think about, okay, let's just say for AI Max, for example, we're going to run an AI Max campaign. How are we going to know if that campaign is actually successful? We're
yeah,
going to look at impressions, clicks,
yeah.
or I think we need to jump a little bit further and say, are we getting qualified leads? Sorry, I only
Yeah.
talk lead generation. I don't know
Sure.
any kind of e-commerce. That's witchcraft to me.
Me, that's
Um,
fine. I love it.
so are we getting qualified leads? Are
Yeah.
these leads roughly the same or better cost than what we were getting from search? Are these leads turning into bookings or sales or whatever the case may be? So I think the mistake would be not thinking all the way through to the end where the money comes out of the whole thing, and
Yeah.
just looking at the kind of the upstream performance metrics, the
Yeah.
in-platform metrics, impressions, clicks, leads, cost per click, cost per lead, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. We're all about saying that we should test. And that's like a very big thing that has always been said since big beginning, since 2007, since you started, Peter. Since we started, it's like, test things. Don't necessarily just go foolhardy, but how people approach tests. What should success look like? We don't talk enough about that. Defining that this is good, defining things like statistically significant. When you get that bit of like being statistically significant, and then you can be like, okay, this good performance, I can actually rely on it. Those kind of things. I don't know whether that's still. been looked at.
Yeah, I laugh at that. One is I studied statistics as part of my degree and failed it.
Oh no. So what's your views about statistically significant?
Well, firstly, so that's the only part of engineering that I use. I use
Still
in my
used.
day-to-day work. So I had to figure it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
I think there's there's statistical significance is not well understood. And I think stats in general is not well understood. So
Yeah.
people will say things confidently like, "Oh, run an A/B test for a month, and then you'll know the answer." The real answer is if you're doing 100 leads a month, you probably need to run that same A/B test for 3 years before you hit
Wow.
some kind of statistical significance in terms
Mm.
of useful data, like for a qualified lead or a sale.
Yeah.
There's we tend to in our industry we tend to jump onto this is statistically significant
Yes.
with almost no data.
Right.
I don't subscribe to the ABT, always be testing, and maybe that's
Mm.
heresy to say that, but often I'm not testing things that other people are testing.
Okay. Lord, I feel
I
like
seldom test ad copy.
okay.
I seldom test, different color on a landing page button, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, those kind of different colors, like I think that's a very pointless. I feel like I want to ask you 10 more questions about that, but I feel like that's another podcast
Yeah,
episode
no, we've got
or an article that we can put
we've been here.
together.
Yeah, we've been here a while. I'm happy to talk about those things.
Oh,
This has been really fun talking with you, and
this
I could geek out about ads for ages.
I could listen to you geek out about ads for ages. I don't know what about it. I listen, just literally you just. I like when geeks are really like it's exciting. You can see that sparkle in their eyes when they're talking about like those ads, and I just love it. I just love watching it. That's the reason why I do this podcast. I love listening to people talk about the things that they're passionate about, especially in terms of the digital ads and how we're doing it. And why my angle is from mistakes is because a lot of people are doing it wrong. And a lot of people are, giving advice based on like their one account of one piece of data. And I'm like, guys, we can't just do that and just say that Google is wrong because of this one thing that I do, with minimal budget and it didn't go well. I'm like, so yeah, I hope we keep talking and I'm hoping people are encouraged to even like, go on podcast.ppc.live, please try register to be a guest so that we can talk about the different ways to do Google Ads to ensure that you're not spiking up your CPCs and you're not giving bad advice out there. So I'm going to wrap us up now. This has been such a great chat here, but like, yeah, we need to do a part 2. Please tell me that you'll be willing to do that. That'd be really great.
Yeah, that would be a pleasure. It's fun geeking out about these things.
Amazing. But yeah, before we go, one last question that, I don't know whether you're a movie geek like me. I love movies, but so this is my last question. If your PPC career were a movie, what would the title be?
Okay, I'm not going to tell you that yet. You tell me, what would your movie title be? I'm allowed to turn it around, aren't I?
I don't know. The one movie that comes to mind, because I'm like, because I tell people it can be something that a movie that, you relate to or just any random title. And for me, the movie that comes to mind is like my favorite movie is like Moulin Rouge,
Okay.
as because red is my favorite color. Everybody will
Uh-huh.
see that on the PPC Live branding, and even rouge means red, and it's such an extravagant movie. And I'm like, how does that relate to my career? I feel like with my career in the past, especially in the past, like let's say 5 to 10 years, I've just allowed my career to go in whatever direction I wanted to do. I wanted to do a
Okay.
podcast one day, and I started doing a podcast. I wanted to start an event one day, and I started doing events. And even some of my
Brilliant.
friends, they're like, I knew you do a newsletter and a blog and content man. And I'm like, I knew what? And I'm like, that's what for me, it reminds me of Moulin Rouge. If you watch Moulin Rouge, there's
Okay.
a lot going on. And it's like, poof, poof. And you're like, guys, one scene can be just so chaotic, it seems like. And so for me, I think Moulin Rouge will be mine. Yeah.
Very nice. I guess I would choose, only from the title, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right. Okay.
Because there's been some great stuff. I've made a great living out of it. for years and years. There's been some terrible stuff, and
Yeah.
well, there've been some things that have been frankly ugly.
Yes, I think the industry, I think that we can blame it on the industry just in general. The industry has been good, bad, and ugly sometimes. So definitely relate with you on that one. Oh, Pete, that has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for
Well, thank
really.
you for inviting me.
My pleasure. You didn't hold back. I love that. You just let the geek out. And I love that. I'm glad our audience got to experience that too. And if people want to hear more about you geeking out, I feel that we don't hear enough about you on the social medias. And I know that might be just a personal preference, but like, where can people find you geeking out?
Well, I write at pete-bowen.com. It's my personal website, and I try write there often. I publish a newsletter, usually once a week, and that's been the extent of my sort of public contributions. I try help people on the internet wherever I can find them, on Reddit and on PPC Live and places like that as well.
Yes, yes. And PPC Live is a good mention. Like, Pete is very good at sharing articles, and even that system decay story that he shared, he put an article together. I'll share the link to that. That's very relevant in terms of how to really, spot that out, avoid it, and just making sure you're looking at all the different things that can affect your paid search account, and making sure that you're not having just too narrow a point of view when you're looking at your account. Like, you really look at the whole system and what would affect. So yeah, we'll share all those links to the show in the show notes. So make sure that you check all that out. But for now, thank you so much, Peter, for being on our show. And yeah, I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon.
Thank you very much. I know this has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Pete, for sharing so passionately that story about, the mistakes that you've made, why it has now made you the expert that you are today, the advice of what people need to do to ensure that they're not making that mistake, or if they've just already made the mistake, what needs to be done. And remember, as Pete said, we are not click pushers. We are not just there to drive whatever kind of nonsense traffic that that there is to our client's website. Like that client of his that had an ex-Googler just set up an account, a PMAX account, sending impressions of outside the target area. That just fills me with dread, and just makes me think that the integrity of our industry, it has a loss. But yeah, for the full discussions and for the full all the links and all the resources that Pete shared, please go to our podcast.ppc.live site with the latest of episode that you'll see up there, or just search for his name. You'll find this episode, and this was such a fantastic conversation. I'm sure you'll agree. But yeah, going on to, if you're listening to this before April the 29th, 5:00 in the afternoon, there's still time for you to buy a ticket and join us in Brighton as one of the Brighton SEO Hero Conf Fringe events that's happening on April 29th at about starting from PM at Temple Pub, which is just on the riverside, like on the river itself. As soon as we finish the event, I might it's going to be evening, so I'm not going to jump into the river right after, but maybe I'll have an afternoon swim before joining the event. Who knows? It's going to be a very brilliant and bright day. Join for fantastic discussions that are going to be led by Jack Wilmore from We Discover, Amina Demiri from Vixen Digital. They're based out there in Brighton, as well as Julia Rimmel, who is coming all the way from Germany. She's someone who's a top 100 influencer. She is also spoken at different events in Barcelona, Copenhagen, Munich, Berlin, co-hosted events with the Google growth team, and she's going to be talking to us about growth. So yeah, she's a headliner speaker that you do not want to miss. And if you want to bring friends with you, we're giving a free ticket for every free ticket sold. So yeah, please join us for that. We'd love to have you. But before I leave you now as well, if you want to get a ticket, go to ppc.live or just search PPC Live on Google. It will be the first one. PPC Live events will be one of the first. We've done our SEO strong, so it will be one of the first links to go. If it's an Eventbrite link, you click through as well. That will take you to buy a ticket. Anyway, so before I leave you, delighted to share that I'm also taking on coaching clients. If you want to build up your confidence, you want to have the confidence to ask for that promotion, ask for that pay rise, and just be the confidence, like entrepreneurial spirit that you can have within a company. I totally highly recommend that we have a chat. Go to themarketinganu.com to book some time with me so that we can really figure out, what's missing, what you need to do to ensure that you skyrocket your career. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the show, and I look forward to bringing more PPC F-ups and triumphs next week. Thank you. Bye.